Ólale, güey, ¿por qué está tomando mi cerveza? Hey guys, Greg here, Bone Tactical. Today I'm gonna share with you an actual Mexican hitman, or what would be most likely to be a Mexican hitman or sicario EDC. Now, I'm throwing in obviously some cool stuff for entertainment factor, but what I'm gonna share as far as the information goes is very accurate. And just like any Bone Tactical video, maybe some of you guys are just coming to the channel here for the first time, I'm sharing on a subject in which I have extensive experience and intimate knowledge. So I know quite a bit about Central America, Latin America, and the underworld, and I'm gonna explain a lot to you. Many of you guys may be living in the United States, and you may wanna know, hey, are there people that were hitmen in their countries once upon a time coming to the United States? Are they crossing the border and are they now living in the United States? And what were they like? What is it like being a hitman in Mexico? And many of you guys may wonder that, and for good reason, because there's no longer a such thing as hitmen in America. It's phased out. There's not necessarily hitmen anymore in the US. And you may say, Greg, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. Actually, very rarely do I talk about my family or personal life. But recently, my great uncle has been talked about quite a bit, and he was actually the longest standing mafia hitman in the history of the United States. So in the history of the world and the American mafia. Little Pete Tambone, you guys may have heard of him. We don't mention anything about that in my family, but recently everybody and their brother's doing interviews for magazines and stuff talking about my uncle. If you guys want to see more information, maybe I'll do a little setting the record straight about that in the future. You can comment below and ask me, I'll share that information. Either way, that's kind of my backstory. I do know what I'm talking about. I have worked with and around Mexican hitmen, or more specifically, sicarios, from everywhere from El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico, every country you can imagine. To let you guys know how seriously I'm taking this video, and yeah, we're gonna have a good time, we're gonna have fun, we're gonna show some shooting clips and woo, do a little dancing and wear stupid hats. But I'm taking this very seriously. I've even put on about 10 pounds just to fit the role of the introduction, only eating churros so I could work on my pancita and really show you guys the real prep and the real deal here. So taking this role seriously. So I'm sure you guys are wanting to get right into it. Everything that I'm wearing, and I've got all kinds of stuff on the table here, I'll talk you through what would be the likely scenario that a Mexican hitman or sicario would have on their person. What would they carry? Before we actually get into the gear, we probably need to lay a little bit of a foundation of what is a Mexican hitman. And the word in Spanish is sicario. And that word really has a broad meaning, as far as it could be anywhere, potentially somebody that's a bodyguard of a underworld figure, all the way up to just specifically what we would consider a hitman. It also, in certain organizations, designates a level of a worker. So it doesn't just necessarily mean, and it's not a high-level worker. So in some Mexican organizations, the term sicario might actually mean that it's like a soldier. Soldado is, of course, different. but it might be a level designation, because what you don't see is you don't see a lot of high-level sicarios necessarily. It's considered to be, if they survive long enough as a hitman, then they become a boss, right? They become a jefe. And then so they're no longer, they got their origins or their roots by killing people or working at that level, working their way up. Or a great example would be Chapo, right? El Chapo, everybody's heard of El Chapo. He started small, worked his way up as a sicario, no longer was considered a sicario once he was the boss, so he wasn't a hitman anymore. So what we're actually going to discuss is what a real hitman would be, and a lot of people, since there's really no hitmen in America anymore, you guys don't really know anything about it. Now, hitman is not a favorable job, right? It's not something people don't, as little kids, most people anyway, don't go out and say, hey, I want to be a hitman when I grow up. So you have to first understand, these are people from very limited opportunities. They may not have gone to school. They may not be even able to read or write. They're very from bajo recursos. They come from limited resources, and they're poor people is what we would call them. Very, very poor in some cases. In some cases, they come from struggling families, what we would consider to be poor, just normal poor. In other cases, they're from extreme poverty. I'll give examples along the way that I know, okay? And the reason that I know those examples is because I've worked as a private security contractor, which is a very broad term, and anything to do with anytime somebody needs somebody with a gun and a skill set in any country around the world, I've been there, and I happen to have had, like I say, extensive experience in Central and Latin America. And then there's levels throughout that. So there's old school and new school, okay, which is just the changing of the times. I'm an old man now, and there's not very many people alive. Most of the people that I knew or worked with back in the day, they're gone now. Even some of my good buddies, like, you know, Primo, you saw in a lot of my early videos, he passed away a couple of years ago. And so, you know, there's just nobody left from my early days of contracting in Central America. It's extremely dangerous. It's maybe a 6-month life expectancy. I did it for a number of years, and thank goodness, mostly just making the world's most effective edged weapons now and making cool YouTube videos. Anyway, what's old school and what's new school, Bone? Well, right now I've got a mix of old school and new school. Comment below if you can identify what you've already seen in this video that's old school hitman style and new school hitman style. What the nueva generación is the new kids, the new, and I call them kids because they're up and coming young guys that they weren't like that when I was in the game, so to speak. So these guys are wearing trucker caps with roosters on the front, and they're doing, some of them don't even wear boots anymore. So you've got this original gangster, the old school, viejo escuela, macho alfa, pecho peludo, vaquero, charro, así que it's basically an old school Mexican cowboy, hardcore, you know, Pancho Villa theme that was back in the day with these guys. And the machismo, the man-dominant culture is still extremely strong, and especially in Mexico, very male-dominant culture. You got to be a tough guy. So that hasn't changed, but the style and the look has changed. So this shirt is an example of the new style, right? The new look, the new way things are going. And this is, you know, Psycho Bunny, I think it's called. The boots that I'm wearing are a throwback to the old style. The older style guys would wear the pearl snap button downs, like an El Sicario shirt that I make and produce on my website, right? Those are the old school standby pearl snaps, Western buckles. We'll get into firearms, you know, what kind of guns they like, what kind of guns they use. We'll talk about, so stay tuned, this is gonna be an in-depth video, right? Talk about weapons, knives, everything that these guys carry head to toe, we're gonna go through it. Now, the old guys would wear cowboy hats, right? This sombrero that I have here is it's the charro look, and it's really for It's really for show or for festivals, special events, stuff like that. And it's not actually as much as what you would consider to be in the hitman culture. Remember, these guys, it's more in the money, family with money culture or real ranchers and stuff like that. So the hitman would actually have been much more likely to wear just a regular cowboy hat and boots, right? Now they're doing, you know, cool sneakers, skinny jeans, and the psycho bunny with a trucker cap is what you'll see them, you know, kind of generally speaking wear. So that's the difference between old generation and new generation of these guys. We talked about that they're generally speaking from a poor family. So when they tend to be very flashy because when they get money, they haven't had money and maybe they don't know what to do with it, or so to speak, it's a new money crowd. So they're poor from being poor, new money crowd. Not all hitmen, Mexican hitmen, make money. So now that we have a kind of a general understanding of who these guys are, where they're from, then within the ranks, there's huge differences, right? Some guys start their own cartel. When somebody says the cartel, there's so many cartels. I've personally known so many cartel members and leaders of so many different cartels, you can't even name them all. There's of course the big cartels, but any kind of a group now they're calling a cartel una banda, or man, so many. So don't think that when you hear cartel that it's one or two or three, it's hundreds, and every country has different cartels. So very different, very something, most of this stuff, you know, you guys probably don't know. So that's why I would say maybe less than 1% of my subscribers or followers or people even watching this video even know any of this stuff that I'm sharing. That's why I'm giving you this baseline. Again, if you got guys, people are gonna be possibly coming to the US. Well, there's tons, there's millions of Mexicans coming to the US, and most Americans don't understand their culture at all. So very, very different culture in Mexico, huge class gap, way different culture between well-to-do Mexicans, rich Mexicans, and the poor. And so your hitman is not a job that rich kids are going out and doing. It's very rare that you would find a person. So how does one get into it? Well, it depends, like I say, whether you're working for a cartel, whether it's a big cartel or a small cartel. There are some independent operators as well. That means that these guys have to develop their own personal skill set, which varies greatly. But there is also some things that you can say, and you know, to defend yourself and be a solid American, especially if you live near the border or anything like that, and you're gonna run up against some of these guys, because sicario or hitman in Mexico can also mean enforcer or anybody really that works with a gun. So it doesn't necessarily mean hitman only like the way that we think it does. That being said, I'm gonna explain to you guys what skill set they have, what weapons they like to use, what their tendencies are, how you can spot them, all that kind of stuff. And that's why I'm sharing this video, actually to help so we can identify and definitely not to glorify in any way this lifestyle. This is a lifestyle that really nobody wants, and the guys that are in it don't really like it. They won't tell you they like it. They live fast, and they live very, very short, okay? So a lot of these guys that maybe they got involved. So there's Mata, which is the gangs. That's not necessarily a Mexican thing. So there are sicarios that work for small gangs or branches of MS-13, 18th Street gang, but that's mostly the alrededores, around Mexico, south of Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua. It's important to understand these designations. So there's all kinds of hitmen, but if we're gonna talk about a specific Mexican hitman, it could be an independent operator that sells his services to various different cartels. We have to understand there's lots of different cartels. And then even within different cartels, sometimes there's factions or plazas. It all depends on how politics are. Right now, how things are going with the biggest Mexican drug dealer that's ever existed getting arrested and traicionado, betrayed by El Chapo's son, El Mayo, was the biggest. El Señor, he was the biggest ever, really, ever. He recently got arrested in the United States, and so that is going to upset, well, that did upset everything. So everything's just crazy upset. Trump's talking about sending down special forces from the US to fight these guys. So everything's up in the air right now, everything's changing. And it's gonna go back to how it was kind of, I guess, when I knew it. I'll probably share a story in this video as well of an experience I had, just letting you know how insane these hitmen are. I'll share a story in a while of a just disgusting murder massacre that happened in a place I was working, and just unbelievably disgusting, violent, just crazy. So these are guys in most cases that come from nothing. They have no opportunity, so they get close to some criminal organization or whatever it may be. And what normally happens is when they're very young, 10, 13 years old, somebody hands them a pistol and says, shoot this guy right here. And that's how they get started usually. Somebody forces them to do it. They end up doing errands or mandados until they start killing people because somebody's training them. They're all sociopaths. So whatever guy takes one of these kids and starts teaching them how to desensitize them to kill. That's mostly how they get started. And then, you know, unless they're already a sick person and seek out the job, which is kind of rare, there's just not that many people who are actually that disgusting in their mind or evil to begin with. So a lot of them get trained up by other people that are already doing that and miserable about their lives. So that's what we'll have to understand as far as their skill set goes. These guys are not, generally speaking, well educated. Like I say, some of them can't read and write. What they actually end up doing are protecting transports of drugs. They guard territory, guard buildings or people, the family of the bosses, so they can be a bodyguard in that case. In multi-use, they can be guarding drug transports or any illegal activities. They can go as far as kidnapping other factions or even for making money. When you say hitman, it doesn't translate, since there's no hitman in America anymore, and since we don't understand the concept because none of this stuff really exists in America. Our law system doesn't allow for this to work. Mexico is a narco state controlled by the drug trade, and even stuff like their oil trade is also controlled by the drug trade. So they work hand in hand. So we'll have to discuss that as well when we start talking about guns and culture and everything like that and what they might carry. So now we know our stereotypical guy is going to want to be really flashy. He might wear a watch. Most of your guys are probably going to wear like a G-Shock. Why is it that they would wear a G-Shock? Well, because these guys came up from nothing. So just having a decent Casio G-Shock watch is a big deal for them. So the average hitman's probably just going to have a G-Shock. This particular watch, I'm using this opportunity to share some cool watches. I really like this watch. This is sponsored stuff. This particular watch is a Smith & Bradley, not one necessarily that a Sicario would be using or a Mexican hitman. Comes with a little box. But the reason that I'm sharing about this particular watch is, again, I'm just using this opportunity to show some stuff that has been sent in that I like, and then so your guy's going to be happy to have a watch. He's probably going to wear a watch not to tell time necessarily, because we have cell phones now, but he's going to wear a watch as a status symbol. And so as they work their way up, of course, Rolex, and a lot of them wear fake Rolexes because they don't know that they're fake. They don't know how to tell the difference. But a Rolex is that elite status symbol. All of the people that I've known that had anything to do with the narco trade, drug trade, everything like that in Mexico, they've all had Rolexes, every single one of them. That is at the level that they can. So they buy watches is when they can. It's fast money. So the thing about Rolex though is that most of the hitmen don't last long enough to make enough money to buy a Rolex. So by the time that they're buying Rolexes, they're no longer a hitman. They've worked their way up to some sort of a higher level in the organization, generally speaking. I have known some hitmen with Rolexes, and those are the guys that start their own group of hitmen, and then they're sending the other people out to do the dangerous stuff, and then they have their own hitmen protecting them. So they're also a boss. So at Rolex level, it's boss level. They're very flashy, like I say, but in their own way. They have their own very diverse culture, and they really are into things like weird things that are Catholicism based. They're going to likely carry cash, obviously. If they're an elite level, there are very, very few very good, skilled guys. They're going to carry a lot of cash and various currencies of cash. Those are few and far between. Remember, these guys don't have a long life expectancy. They start with no education. Guys that are just barely young, guys getting into it, and guys that are older with skill, which is, like I say, few and far between. But what they do have in common is this weird, you know, Catholic version of a patron saint of evil drug dealers and hitmen. So they have their own patron saint, and they do get into this weird, you know, whatever culture it is. So this is an example. This is from Hellbent Holsters, and it has this little clip on here, and this is a holster that that one might be carrying, and the bracelet here. Now this, a low-level guy would just have a bracelet, maybe with some sort of a spiritual whatever thing, rosary, maybe like a pouch that has some magic whatever in there. They're really into weird stuff. So some kind of a flashy weird bracelet with beads or something, or any kind of special meaning for them. And very superstitious people. And then so if they're an elite level, they may have this bracelet in particular, which is also a very potent tool for a hitman. This is the bone occlusion bracelet from Bone Tactical. But this would be, it would be highly unlikely if you see a hitman with one of these, then there's safe to say there's probably nothing you can do. It's probably too late. The people that know about stuff like this, they're at the very elite levels of the skill set. You're probably not going to see one on a regular, just generalized Mexican hitman. They don't live long enough to learn and to get that level of advanced skill set. So we've got a couple knives here on the table, 3 knives here on the table, and I'll talk about, this will also go with levels. Let's say that this is like a level 1 guy. It's basically just an Italian stiletto. It's got pearl on it. It's flashy. It's shiny. These guys love anything that's shiny, anything that's pretty. It's the fast life, okay? So this would be something that they might even get a version of this at a flea market. All right, this is an Italian one here, not extremely expensive. I forget where I got it, but not nothing crazy, not a great knife, not something that is effective, okay? This would be any of the guy of the above, but an early level, low level skill set, new generation and old generation, they both might like a knife like this. Here, this is a leather sheath on an EDC kank. This would be an old school guy that has the leather belt like you saw in the video. I'll probably throw a little screenshot here of the belt. That's a core belt, core essentials, KORE essentials, tag that in the description below, but it's got that cowboy style. So that's the old school hitman, and that's what I was more familiar with back in my time, and that's what these guys had was the cowboy style. The newer guys aren't gonna like it maybe as much, but they still integrate the leather. So this leather sheath here would be something that either new generation or old generation would like. They do really like their leather. They don't necessarily carry their pistol in a holster, even if leather, which we'll get into when we talk guns, but very strange. They tend not to carry holsters, hence the term Mexican carry, meaning carrying a pistol without having a holster. But this is their knives. They do carry in sheaths because you can't really carry a good knife without a sheath unless it's a machete, and then they oftentimes carry their machetes without a sheath, sometimes with, sometimes without, depending on what they're doing and what they can afford. So again, as you're working up in the ranks, if they would definitely be likely to carry, if they're one of the old school guys, a nice belt knife with a nice leather sheath. Having an actual EDC kank would be very, very high level. Again, getting into being a boss at that point because of the price point and as well as skill set. Elite, the best of the best, because there are very, very few very good ones, would have something like this NPE Ghost knife, okay? This is a knife that you can get in anywhere, and so the best of the best would know about things like non-permissive environment knives. Most would not. I took the opportunity to throw in these proof eyewear glasses because they sent them to me. These are a very new generation hitman style. The new generation likes these square frame, flashy, let's say Versace, if we're gonna coin a term, style, Rolex, Versace, and Psycho Bunny is new generation. They will likely not have a vehicle if they're low level, just getting into it. They'll be driving somebody else's old beat up truck, something that belongs to the organization as they work their way up. Once they get to boss status, they'll probably have a Hilux, a Toyota Hilux that they might use for work, and then maybe a flashy car that they'll drive around regularly once they're boss status. Toyotas are the big thing just because of reliability down there. This is from a Toyota I got in Guatemala, and you know, this little pistol on here just shows the sentimental value. They have a big sentimental value, so they like little keychains, stuff like this, that you know, might be an AK-47. They like having them on everything, on their shirts and embroidered and on their keychains everywhere. So they just really get into that lifestyle. They don't understand at the early levels the real gray man theory. It's not until they get to the elite level do they start to make that curve from getting away from all the flashiness, and then once when you find a Mexican hitman that's very, very rare, but that's very, very good at their job, you won't even know they're a hitman, and then they take that swerve. But 99% of them are going to be what I'm showing right now. And then the 1% or less than 1% of Mexican hitmen that have done it a long time and have developed an advanced skill set. And stay tuned, guys, because we'll talk about how good they are at combatives, how good they are at what is their actual skill set. We'll finish the video with firearms, what they carry for guns, what they do about guns, how they get guns, and what is their actual skill set. So you guys can be prepared if you ever come across one. At the higher levels, you may have some knowledge of tactics and subterfuge. So this is not actually a car key. It looks like a car key in every way, but it is not a car key. It is a stash thing here. So you can have whatever you want to have stashed on the inside of this. And you know, at the higher levels, these guys will start to realize, well, they'll just learn. You just learn as you go, and you start to realize that you have to have a plan B, plan C, and you start to get wily and have backups and less flashy, like I say. But that's just a cool little thing. You can keep a little bit of money rolled up in here, whatever you want to keep rolled up in there. A lot of these guys will, since they transport drugs, they'll end up using the drugs, and so that a lot of them will actually carry drugs. So this also could be used for having a little bit of cocaine in there, and then you can, you'll see that they'll have a lot of them will have some sort of a cocaine container, and then like a spoon or something to do the cocaine with. So it's just everything leads to them not living very long and dying quickly and basically living unfulfilled, miserable lives. So drug paraphernalia is definitely something that you'll see on those guys. Heavy drinking. So again, why I had to put on 10 pounds and do cardio, lose a little bit of muscle to really fit the role in this video. I've been running, I haven't been hitting the weights real hard, but I don't really have a whole lot of weight equipment here set up right now. I've just been crazy busy I've been bonetactical.com, been sold out of everything right now. I'm just sold out of everything and busting my butt trying to get new products made. And we just had a crazy end of the year sales spike. So anyway, so I am pretty much fitting the mold right now. I'm about 260. I'm probably a lot bigger than the average Mexican, but there's bigger Mexican guys than me as well. As far as the health concerns and everything like that goes, that's why I'm discussing this. They're not the healthiest people, and that's because they're not healthy mentally. They're not healthy spiritually. They're not they seek after these crazy religious cult, whatever, evil things that are evil religions, right? And they don't have a relationship with their maker. They don't have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. So they're miserable people, and they look like it. You can tell they may, at the higher levels, if there are higher levels of them around, then they may look cool because they have money, but they're not going to be healthy, really, overall, just because the things that they do. And like I did tell you, I will share a story here at the end about how disgusting and crazy the things that they do are. But you can't live with yourself doing the things that they do. So not without heavy, copious amounts of drugs and alcohol and slowly dying on the inside. Let's talk about the guns, all right? It's got a ghost red dot on there that's pretty cool. It's got a Tyrant CNC barrel on here, all kinds of little accessories and whatnot. I'll tag all of the accessories on this pistol below. But showing the pistol because they love flashy, right? So any accessories that they can get, they want to put on their firearms and their guns. when we talk about, this is what we talk about EDC, so it's everyday stuff. They do have access now to plate carriers and helmets and stuff like what I have behind me. Some of them have access now. We got to start getting into training. They have had some limited access now. Again, at the bigger cartels, at the higher levels, they have had access to military training. They've trained some of them even with elite units. They were sending guys to combat to the United States, to go to the Marine Corps or other things, go overseas and fight and then come back and share their, so they do have all kinds of skill sets at the very, very elite, high cartel level. But that's, again, starting to get into maybe like less than 30% of hitmen are working for big cartels or are making money and stuff like that. So the training is still very minimal, and 70% of them are only going to be able to be accurate with the firearm at ranges less than 100 yards. I would say 90% of them are going to be accurate less than 100 yards. I'd say 70% of them accurate less than 50 yards. And I'd say 50% of them have never taken a life at more than 7 yards. So for you guys, as far as being prepared against these guys, what you want to know is that they don't have the long range training. They don't have sniper capabilities or long gun precision rifle capabilities. It's very, very rare with these guys. A few of them do, right? But that's few and far between. The very, very, very top of the line of them. They don't go every day with plate carriers, even the ones that do. So there are some limited, and that's the scariest of that, is that there is some infiltration of even American special operations training into the bigger cartels. That was the guy that got arrested we talked about earlier in the video recently in America. His cartel was the biggest and the most powerful, and he was the one that had the highest trained. And there was, when you're making so many billions, if not trillions of dollars, you do have the opportunity to train. They just don't really focus as much on training as you might think. And so as far as what they may carry goes, Berettas are huge with those guys. They love Berettas. They love shiny, flashy, chrome. They do like AKs. They get into AKs. And that goes, we have to also say about how they carry, right? Carrying Mexican is just, that's the general way they carry. They're starting to get into having holsters now. And if I had to say which holster these guys would like the best, I got this holster in from Gun & Flower, and it's pretty cool. I haven't used it yet, but it's pretty cool because it's clear. So like I say, they like showy or new or flashy stuff. And this is just a clear IWB holster. Anyway, like I say, I'll link all this stuff in the description below. Cool holster from Gun & Flower. And I think a typical Mexican hitman would really like that clear holster because it's different and it's cool. So the newer generation, they're finally starting to use holsters. Back in the day, they just had the fancy cowboy belts with a pistol tucked into the belt, most likely a chrome Beretta, biggest, coolest thing you could have, most popular. Nowadays, they're starting to get into carry stuff. A lot of these new generation guys will have a bag. Again, all this stuff linked in the description below. This is a Falco specifically designed to carry a gun. So the newer generation guys, since they still don't necessarily like holsters that much, a lot of them will use a sling bag. Shoulder bags are getting very popular with these guys. Now that they are starting to carry holsters, they still wear this kind of shirt a lot, and they still print, and they like to carry big extended magazines, and so that you can see that they have a gun. Even if it's on a holster now, they still want to have a super tight shirt so that everybody knows they're armed. That's still just basic level stuff. It's not the smartest thing to do. It gets them in a lot of problems, but it's an ego thing. At the higher levels, very elite levels, they'll start to get into concealed carry. So it would be a higher level guy that would have one of those clear holsters, like this clear holster from Gun & Flower, because this is IWB and it can be concealed. So that would be very high level, very elite. It would be a guy that had been around a while and has some training. So what you also have to understand about the culture in Mexico is that basically, for all intents and purposes, guns are illegal. And so these guys are going to have some kind of special permission to carry. I'll show you here. This is a special permission to carry firearms in Central America that a guy might have. I'm not going to, show you completely all the details on there because it's just not a good idea. But so, almost nobody legally can carry a gun. And then since Mexico's a narco state, then you can get these special permissions. So they will have a wallet and a card, and again, very high elite level guys would have that, very, very elite level. You still have to understand that most of your general hitman, okay, you can pay a guy literally 20 bucks, 20 US dollars. They don't respect 20 US dollar bills as much, very funny, because they're so many low-level drug people have 20 US dollar bills in Central America and Mexico that it's almost like monopoly money. Nobody wants $20 bills. They only want $100 bills because there's literally just so much crap $20 bills everywhere from all of the drugs being sold in the US and all the money coming back in dollars. All those $20 are just, nobody wants them. So it's crazy how much the drug trade affects everywhere in Latin America. It's hard to change $20 bills. If you ever go down there, don't bring $20 bills, bring hundreds, and make sure they're unmarked, because there's so much dirty money down there, literally dirty drug money, that they're picky. The banks are picky about what they take. If it's got a ripped corner, they're like, nah, I'm not gonna take this. Too much dirty drug money down here. So I told you, this video is getting very long-winded. I told you I'd finish off with a story. Guatemala, Coban. Back when Chapo was arrested, there was a guy down there they call El Tigre. I know his son. He's one of the new generation looking guys. Cool guy. Had the pleasure of meeting him. I've never worked with him, don't know him very well. Just happened to meet him. El Tigre was the boss of that area. Funny story, he got arrested as well. He was in jail one time, and they let him out of jail. He was what we would call a Mexican hitman. Started low and built himself up. His son's now has a lot of money and an empire thanks to his dad. It's awesome. The one time, I only met his son once. The one time I met his son, he was wearing a shirt, I think it might not have been this brand, Rolex watch. And so very, very common. Had the trucker's hat with, I don't know if it was a rooster on it, but very similar. I mean, it's crazy how these guys have it's a culture, and they like what they like. Anyway, cool thing, his dad one time had so much clout, he had got arrested for something, but he needed to go kill somebody, and they let him out of jail to go kill somebody, and then he came back, got out of jail, went and killed somebody, and then came back and checked himself back into jail. The crazy story that I'm gonna end off with is that when Chapo got arrested, the Zetas, Los Zetas, it's another cartel that was warring with Chapo, and they came to Coban. And all of Chapo's associates, when Chapo got arrested, they went and laid low. They left Coban. And so there's this big mansion in Coban, Guatemala. And the Zetas showed up there, Los Zetas. And the hitmen, the Mexican hitmen that work for the Los Zeta cartel. Just unbelievable what they did. They couldn't find any of the bosses because all the bosses were in hiding. And so they rounded up, there was like 150 people. They rounded up all of the workers, gardeners, housekeepers, everything, all the people, field workers around this mansion that was this Chapo's associates in Guatemala, because Chapo was in jail, so this was a power shift. They rounded them all up, and they got out, they pulled all their trucks up, they cranked up the music, they were listening to ranchera music. They pulled out a bunch of chainsaws, they lined these people up, and they just started dismembering these people with chainsaws. And they used their arms and legs like paintbrushes, and they painted all the buildings. There were these white mansions, beautiful buildings, and they painted messages to the Sinaloa cartel with the body parts of these people that they were killing. So just pretty crazy. That's the kind of people that we're talking about here. Now with the Zetas, they were ex-military guys, a lot of those guys, and they also had a little bit of a higher level of training. They still were very flashy. They still went around like maniacs, but they had that was another type of Mexican hitman that liked the type of stuff behind me on the wall. So they really liked flashy, or they all like flashy guns, but these guys like AR-15s. They like plate carriers. They like helmets. They like stuff like that. But they still had the mix of everything else, the mix of the old school culture, because Mexican roots, and then, Mexican cowboy vaquero roots, charro, and then they had there as well their a little bit of the new generation thrown in, just because it's what culture is down there. I would say, guys, though, don't worry too much about the training. Is still not, these guys are not going to be elite, most of them. And then a lot of them are going to catch themselves up with their vices and their evil and the terrible things that they do catch up to them. So we don't have to worry as much about these people, because as long as we're on the right path, and I firmly believe, me being a Christian, that when I have a higher power, which is God, that protects me and guides me. So my relationship with my Savior, Jesus Christ, I'm ready to go. When I die, I know where I'm going. And I don't fear these people, because what can they do to me? What can they take from me, right? When I leave this earth, I'm going to a better place. And these guys take themselves out of the equation. Don't live in fear of any kind of evil person like this. If you run across them, just go the other way. And know that, God has a plan that's greater than we can ask or imagine for everybody's life. And so making this video just because it's something I know about and have had experience with, and it's a hot topic right now. A lot of people in the US want to know what somebody that there might be a hitman that's trying to get away from the cartel and coming to America. What does that person look like? Where are they coming from? What did they do? So this is basically not just Hitman EDC, but this is what is a Mexican hitman. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know what style videos you want to see more of, because guys, I put a lot of work into these videos. Comment below and let me know exactly, if it's a cigar story, what cigar story do you want to hear? If it's a EDC video, how can I mix it up that you like it? What kind of EDC, this, that, and the other. If you like this video, share it with your friends, comment as much as you can. I'm going crazy making videos for a couple days right now, but with production the way it is, it's very possible that in the future I'll start making a lot less videos, just because, I don't have time. And so if you want to see some specific stuff, or you want to hear about or learn about specific stuff, you got to let me know, or, it's very possible I'll be phasing out of YouTube. A lot of guys get YouTube burnout and stuff like that. And the way to prevent that, if you like this channel and help me out, is just make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you click the bell so you get notifications when I put stuff up and you can actually watch it. And please involve yourself, so I know that what I'm doing is helping somebody. I'm just trying to help you guys out and share information that other people aren't sharing or other people don't know about. So please get involved. That's all I'm asking. Not asking for anything, not asking for you to purchase any of my products. Just get involved with the channel here on YouTube, so that I know that it's helping, and so I know that it's worthwhile me to keep making these videos. Thanks. Bone out.